Hey, everybody, and welcome. I'm joined here with Ben, and he's going to do an amazing presentation on taking advantage of a new feature that we just recently added in Strapi, where you're able to add and customize your Strapi dashboard by building widgets, which are basically plugins. And today, Ben is going to walk us through building our own very own widget and a custom field. So thanks for joining us, Ben.
Thanks. Okay, so in this tutorial, we are going to be building a truck tracker to track the location of delivery trucks in real time. And the way that's going to be done is we will create a truck content type, add a custom field to it with a map picker so that you can just select where your truck is on a map, and then a homepage widget to display all of the trucks also on a map, an interactive map. So what we'll need to do is build everything as a plugin. So we will need to scaffold a new plugin, and we'll call it Truck Tracker. And we can do that with using the SDK plugin. There. And then it asks a few questions, like what we want to name the plugin, the display name, a description of it, your name and email address, the GitHub URL if you have one, license, register with admin panel. That's what will automatically just show you that icon on the side. So that way you can just know your plugin is working. And if you have a user interface for your plugin, you can put it there. Register with the server. We also want to go with that. That's what registers your plugin on the back end. Then just some options for configuration, TypeScript. We will use TypeScript. It installs everything.
By the way, if you're following along, you could check out the repo. There'll be the link in the description, and you could check out the README file for the code snippets to help you go through this tutorial.
Okay. All right. Now that everything's installed, it shows you exactly what you need to copy and paste to your project configuration to enable the plugin. So we'll go ahead and do that. That's in the config/plugins file. And we can just stick that in there. Save. At this point, we can just make a new window to watch the plugin. That makes sure that any changes that we do will be automatically compiled, and our plugin will always have the changes that we made to it. Okay. So we go to our plugin that we just created, and we can just run yarn watch, and that will keep the plugin building in the background. All right, now that we have our plugin building and we've enabled it in the configuration, we can start up our Strapi server with yarn develop. But here we get an error that we are missing our app keys. So we can just, for now, we can just copy the existing end file, the example, and use that as our environment. And we'll try again. And there we go. Okay, so now we just need to register our admin account. And if we look over here in the side, we now see our truck tracker plugin. So we know that it's active. So now we can use that. And we can create a truck tracker content type. So we'll need to go to the plugin, source plugins, truck tracker, server, source, content types, and we will create a new file called truck.txt. Here I'll just copy this example code. Plugin content types work exactly like any other content type in Strapi with one addition. We have plugin options available in our schema, and that lets Strapi know if you want your plugin content type to be visible to users of your plugin. So in this case, we want it to be visible in the content manager so people can create trucks, but we don't want them to edit it, so we're going to set false on content type. As far as the attributes we're creating, we're going to have an identifier, which would be like the license plate number for the truck, or however we're going to identify it. Model of the truck, which we'll use an enumeration for. The position, for now we will use a JSON field to track latitude and longitude, but later we're going to be updating that so that we can actually use a custom field to pick from a map. Updated at timestamp, and a key, which will be like the password to prove that you are this truck to update your position. Like the truck driver would have this key to update. Then we need to add it to the content type index so it's actually loaded. So again, here we can just copy and paste from the example to save some time. But what this is doing is just importing that truck file we just got and exporting it from the index, since this is the file that Strapi loads to see what content types are available. Now we're going to make sure that we're watching the plugin building, and we're going to start up our server again to make sure that we see the truck content type. All right, so now that we're able to create delivery trucks, we will try creating one, and we see the position is a JSON field, which is not at all friendly to work with. No one wants to have to type in latitude and longitude values. So the next thing we're going to be doing is replacing position with a custom field to let you select a position on a map. Okay, so we're going to add a Geopicker component, which is just a React component. It's going to need to show a map centered on the current position, let users click to set a new position, display the current latitude and longitude so you know the actual value that you're submitting, and then we'll save that position in the database. So first we're going to create a basic text input version. So we need to create this file in our plugin. This will go in the admin because it's a React component. And so in the components folder that should already be there, we'll just create a new one called Geopicker. Again, I'm going to copy from the example code, and then I'll walk through what it's doing. So this is just a simple React component. We just have some types. Then the component itself, which the important things that it accepts are an onChange value. This is what allows Strapi to know the actual value that you have set. This is essentially what resolves your visual input and tells Strapi what the value actually is. And here, we're just going to use a JSON input as an example. So to register the custom field with the server, we need to go to server, source, register. That's where everything is registered. And we're just going to copy and paste this code here. And what this is doing is it's letting the Strapi server know that we have a custom field called Geopicker, and that it is going to give us JSON data. Then we also need to register it in the admin, so the front end knows what's going on. So we need to go to our index. This will go in the register function. So we just need to copy this section, showing that this is within register. And we need to make sure we include the icon, which you can get from Strapi icons, and the Geopicker component that we just created. Then we need to update our truck schema to actually use the Geopicker instead of JSON. So we will go back to our truck content type and replace position, type JSON, with type custom field, and the custom field attribute with the name of the custom field. At this point, it should be used in the admin, although at this point, since we're just using a JSON input, it should look almost exactly like what we had before. Let's just take a look and make sure it's working. And there we go. This is now using our custom field with a JSON input instead of the default JSON field. So now we need to get a map. We're going to use React Leaflet, which is a very wonderful library for having interactive maps. You can drag it around, you can zoom, and they give you all the code that you need right here. So what we're going to do is add a couple libraries here. It's important that we add this to the plugin itself, not to our main project, because these are modules that are used by the plugin. That way, anywhere that you copy this plugin, it's just going to work rather than adding them to your project. So we're going to add React Leaflet, Then we're going to add the types, since we're using TypeScript. All right, and now we're going to update the code for that React component that we made before. The Geopicker component. And I will explain what has changed. We have some new types and some styles to make it look nicer and to make sure that we have good type safety. Now we have replaced the JSON field with the map component, exactly what you see over here. And now we have a handle position chain callback that is used on map events. This is every time a user selects a new position on the map, it calls this function, which we have written here, handle position change, and it receives the latitude and longitude. So here we're going to create a JSON object, just like we had before, with a key of latitude and longitude. We're going to set the position. And then, as I showed before, onChange is the function that lets Strapi know what the value is. And so we have target with this name, and value is this new position object. So this means every time that the map is updated, it calls this handler, and we inform Strapi, okay, here's the new value. Then we have this, the position itself, just standard React for tracking the position that we're setting. We have a default position, which is actually Paris. You can set that to whatever you want. Okay, so let's load that up and see if that works. Remember that we need to watch the plugin. And because we installed new dependencies, you actually have to stop the watch and then restart it if you haven't. And we're going to try again and see our component. So we refresh, we see a map, but nothing shows up. So it doesn't load because the project needs to have its security middleware policies updated. By default, Strapi projects don't allow third-party data to be loaded into the admin. So we just need to update that to allow all of the OpenStreetMap data to come into the Strapi admin. So this is the one step that you'll have to set on each project that uses your plugin. And you need to go to the configuration for that project. And we're just going to paste in, instead of the default security middleware, we're going to paste in this update, which is pretty complicated, but anytime you need to do this update, you can always just find this, copy paste it, modify what you need to go in it. And here you see that we have the OpenStreetMap URLs and the maps data. So those are all necessary to allow it to load. So we will save that, restart our server, and refresh. And now we have maps. So we can go wherever we want. We click, and we see that the latitude and longitude data is being updated. And when we save, we can see that the map is always going to load from that spot that we selected. So we know that it's working. So the next step is to create a widget on the homepage to show all of the truck data that we're collecting. To do that, we're going to need another widget, another React component that displays a map centered on the average position of the trucks, shows a marker for each truck, and provides pop-ups with the truck information and a link to edit the truck details. It should also update automatically when trucks change. So we need to create a basic widget with just a map to keep things simple. So once again, we will go back to our admin, components, and we will create a map widget file. And in the map widget, we can just paste this code, which I will explain. Essentially, it's an even simpler version as before. It's the map wrapper that we saw in the example code. And it's just going to show a map on a center position. And then later on, we'll add our trucks to it. Once we've created the widget, we need to register it just like we did the other widgets with the other component in the truck tracker admin. Here, register, we can just select the entire thing. So what has changed is now we have added this section where we register the homepage widget. Again, we select our icon. We give it a title. If you use this, then it will be fully translatable. And this is what registers the widget with the Strapi admin. So let's save that and check our server again and go to the homepage. And you will see that we now have a map that is centered on Paris. So it's currently empty, but working. Now we just need to add our trucks to it. So first of all, since I like to take things one step at a time, we'll add some hard-coded truck data just to see how it will look. For that, we will add some more code. The wrong file. So to add the hard-coded truck data, we'll update our map widget file again. This time we have created a marker component, which again you can find in the documentation for React Leaflet, but it's essentially just a marker component where you give it a latitude and longitude, and you can create a pop-up with anything that you want in it. And in the widget itself, we now have created a trucks object with our hard-coded trucks. And you just pass those in with like this. We're just basically dumping the truck data as truck markers. So now we can go check that out. Refresh, and we see our example truck. So the next step is to add actual truck data from the API. In order to do that, we need to create an admin route for the truck info. Since this is all admin data, it's not actually going through the content API, so we'll need to create an admin route for it. To do that, we need to first create a controller. So we will go to the server, go to controllers, and we will add a truck controller. It's called truck.ts. Again, we can paste this in. This one's quite simple. We just provide a single method called getTruckPositions. It accepts a Koa context because the request will be coming in from the API. We're just going to use the document service to select all of our trucks, select the necessary fields that we need for our widget, and send the data back. We need to export that from our controller index file so that Strapi is aware that it exists. And so you see we just import trucks and then export it again. Then we need to create the route to access this controller. So we'll go to routes, and you see we have a content API file, but we don't have any admin API routes. So we'll need to create a new file for the admin API. And in here, we need to export our routes. So we'll just be creating a get method, give it a path, we'll call it truck positions. The handler is the method that we just created in the truck file, and a policy. Here we're just going to ensure that anyone who is logged into the admin panel can access it. In the real world, you might want to add a stricter policy and use permissions to decide who can access it. But for now, we're just going to leave this as anyone who has access to the admin can see this data. Finally, we need to export those routes, again, so that Strapi knows that they exist and can load them up. So we'll go to our index here, routes index. And instead of just exporting a content API object, we also need to export an admin API object. And here we put type admin. That's what lets Strapi know that it's an admin route and not a content API. The content API is where data goes, all of your data ends up publicly. So like when you're sharing it with other apps or websites or wherever, that all goes through the content API. The admin API is for the admin panel itself, the Strapi interface that you use to create content. And so this is actually hidden from the content API. Nobody using the content API can see that this even exists. It's entirely for logged in admins. And since this data is only being shown to admin users for the admin widgets, that's why we need to put it here. So we have created our controller and our routes. Now we can attempt to update the widget and pull that data from Strapi. So I'll walk you through what has changed. Go to our map widget file. And all of this is the same as before. We're still looping through the trucks, creating the markers. But the truck data itself is now retrieved with fetch client. It's actually calling this API point that we just created and using that data for the trucks instead of the hard-coded trucks that we used before. Anytime you want to make an API call from the Strapi admin, you'll want to use this use fetch client. That ensures that the headers are all set properly so that it's using the logged in user's authorization. So you don't have to manage any of that yourself. That's imported from Strapi admin. That part's very important. So we can use that to create the API call where we get the truck tracker truck positions, which you can see in the route that we created earlier. And then we set the truck data to the data that we received. And so now we have data coming from our API rather than being hard-coded. So now we've saved that. We can go check it out. And if we zoom out, we can see the test truck that we created earlier. Click open, and we're on that page. All right, so now we know how to manually enter truck data, and we know how to display it on the admin dashboard. But what about the trucks themselves? Let's say you actually have trucks with GPS devices, but all they're capable of is just posting some data periodically with their GPS coordinates. You can't configure it. You can't have it target a custom Strapi data format. You have to adapt to it because it's a piece of hardware. And that's just how it works. So we can do that. We can create a secure endpoint using that key value, the sort of password that we added to the schema. And we can actually configure it to accept live updated data from the trucks, save that in the database, and update the position data and the timestamp so you know exactly when that truck last updated its position. And we'll continue with that. In order to securely prevent trucks data from being updated without that secret key, we're going to use a policy. That way, it ensures that only authorized devices can update the positions. In a production environment, this could easily be swapped out for something like 2FA or like a one-time password system so that it's totally secure. For now, we're just going to use these keys, though. So in the controller, let's go back and we'll add another method to update the positions. Okay, so we will go update the controller. And we're going to add this update truck position method to our truck. And what this method does, again, it takes the COA context. We're going to pull the identifier, the latitude and longitude out of it, retrieve the truck based on the identifier, throw an error if it's not found, then update update the truck's position with that data that we just received, and then return a simplified version of it back to the truck so it knows that it worked. In the real world, you will need to add validation to the latitude and longitude. We don't want to just trust any data that comes in. So you would at least want to make sure that it's a number, it's a valid latitude and longitude. Here, we'll just put it in directly. Then in our routes, this time we'll put it in Content API because this is a publicly accessible endpoint. It's not just for admins. It's going to be the trucks calling this endpoint. So we will need to add this new route. It's going to be called update position. Oh, I may not have saved. So it's saying that it can't find the controller truck position. It's truck. Okay, so the controller is actually the truck controller. There we go. Okay. So now we can test it out with this, just a little script that I've created that just calls that endpoint and passes in these values. So let's try that out. We'll attempt to create a truck. Oh no, since this is just updating trucks, we need to make sure that the truck actually exists. So we'll go over here. We'll look at our truck. Our truck has an identifier of ASDF and a key of 123. So let's try to create a truck with that data. So we enter the latitude and the longitude and the key. And we see the data from server, what we sent, and then what was updated, and it worked. So now if we go over here and we refresh, we see that we have updated our truck position to the values that we just sent. So we know that our Content API endpoint is working. But now it's not protected, so we need to add the custom policy that I mentioned earlier that validates the key that was passed in. So we need to go to policies in the server. Here we will just put it directly into the file. If you have many policies, you'll probably want to put these in their own files, but for here, we'll just make it simpler. We're going to create a policy called verify truck key. That's where it is. Here it receives a policy context, which you can check out the type for. In there is a request body where you can get the data sent in from the API request. So we're going to pull out the identifier and the key. And we're going to check that truck and make sure that the key matches that truck. So once we've done that, we need to add it to the route to make sure it's actually used on this route. And at this point, it should be working. We're going to try my script again. First, we will try it with the correct password, and we see that it works. And then we're going to try putting in a bad key here. And we see that this time we get a policy error. So that shows us that now it requires the correct key in order to update a truck. Next, we want to be able to track when that truck position was actually updated. So we know the last time that a truck has sent its position, Let's say we don't want to update that just because somebody has gone into the admin and updated the truck. If you change the truck name or the model or anything like that, that doesn't mean that that truck has updated its position. So instead, we're going to create some document service middleware and listen for the exact cases that we want and only update that timestamp when the position data has changed. So to do that, we need to register some document service middleware in the register file in server. This is what it's called when your Strapi server starts up. You see we already registered the custom field here. Now we're just going to create some document service middleware. So we're going to copy that, paste that in. We need to copy over our types as well. Okay. So we've added some document service middleware. You do that by using strapi.documents.use, and then you pass it a function that receives the context and a next function that you call once you have finished whatever actions you need. In order to filter this just by trucks so that we are listening for any truck update, we check the context.uid, make sure that it matches truck, and we check the action since we're only interested in update action. So this means every time an update is called on a truck, our middleware is hit. In here, we will get the truck data that we received, that we were sent. We're going to save the original data, and that way we can compare if the position has actually changed. So here we're going to save the new position and the old position, and if latitude and longitude, either one has changed, we're going to set a new position updated at in our data object. The data is what is going to be saved by Strapi. So this is actually taking the data that is coming in, modifying it, and setting the position updated at. And then after all of that, we always have to do return next, which calls any next middleware in the process. So at this point, it should be working. I'm going to restart. And this time, when we do an update, okay, so now that we have created our middleware, we can go test it out. We can go to our admin, update the position, and save it, and we see that the timestamps changes. If we change some other data, such as the identifier, we see the timestamp doesn't update. So it only changes this timestamp when the location has actually changed. That way you know exactly when the last update for the truck was. All right, and at this point, the entire truck tracker should be ready, good to go. We can see the widgets on the homepage, tracking our trucks. We can create new trucks, set their position, and now we see all of our trucks. And we have our custom field for selecting them.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you so much for that great tutorial. Today, we took a look how to create a custom field that we could add to our collection types to display our map data. Then we took a look how to create a Strapi widget to add to our Strapi admin. So this way you could create custom admin panels for your clients or your projects. And we put everything together by building custom routes and controllers to take advantage of the functionality. So I hope you had fun. And if you have any questions, Monday through Friday, I hang out at Discord's open office hours, 12:30 p.m. CST time. So you could always stop on by and say hello. And thanks again, Ben. That was really awesome.